Yo, what is up guys? Dale Boy here, aka Blue Collar Sports TV. Hope you guys are well. So I saw an interesting story on Twitter this morning. According to Callum Smith's trainer, Joe Gallagher, he has said that Callum Smith is considering lucrative offers from rival promoters. Joe Gallagher admits that Callum Smith's head has been turned, but they're waiting to see what big names Eddie Hearn will offer to compete with the rival offers for Callum Smith. Now let's have a talk about this story. First things first, we have to consider this could be a pitch by Joe Gallagher to get his man a better deal with Matchroom Sports. I believe Joe Gallagher is actually also Callum Smith's manager as well as trainer, so obviously it's his job to get his client the best offers, the best fights, the best paydays. And I wouldn't be surprised if this is Joe Gallagher trying to turn the screw on Eddie Hearn, just really so Eddie offers Callum Smith more money and bigger fights. I wouldn't be surprised if that's the case here. Ultimately, that's what I think's happening here. But as a boxing fan, regardless of how it happens, I want to see Callum Smith in big fights. I personally rate Callum Smith extremely highly. He's very big for 168. He has solid fundamentals across the board. He's one of those fighters that does everything well, but he doesn't really excel in one area. He's just a well-rounded fighter, and on top of that, he has good power as well. Callum Smith is a very good fighter, in my opinion, and potentially the best of the bunch at 168. I just want to see him prove that. I want to see him in the biggest fights. So, as a boxing fan, I just want to see Callum Smith in the best position to get the biggest fights possible. Does that involve moving away from Eddie Hearn? Well, I'm not so sure. Obviously, Eddie Hearn is in cahoots with DAZN in America, and DAZN as a platform basically has the best middleweights in the world, and also they have their toe dipped into 168. They've got names such as Gennady Golovkin, Canelo Alvarez, Billy Joe Saunders. You know, these are all massive fights that would be available through Eddie Hearn. Well, theoretically they would anyway. So, would leaving Eddie Hearn be beneficial? I mean, potentially if Callum Smith went to Golden Boy, that could work, because obviously Golden Boy still has access to the DAZN roster, I guess. So moving to Golden Boy would make sense. But what you have to consider is you have to really take into account what Callum Smith has been asking for. In recent months, this guy has been asking for mega fights. I'm talking about Canelo, I'm talking about Golovkin. Ultimately, Callum Smith is a guy who has turned down a unification fight against Billy Joe Saunders. Callum Smith is a guy who, let's be honest, hasn't really shown any interest in unifying with fellow super middleweight champions. When do you hear Callum Smith talking about Caleb Plant, for example, or Billy Joe Saunders, or the Benavidez versus Durrell winner? You don't really hear Callum Smith talk about those fights because he wants that big payday, and those guys don't really present that, I guess. And I think that's unfortunate. For me, Callum Smith, you know, he won the World Boxing Super Series, which was a good achievement. He beat George Groves in the final, but he got paid exceptionally well for that tournament. He got mega money, and I still believe he is looking for similar paydays now. But in reality, Callum Smith is not a big star. He's not a big name in the UK, other than amongst, you know, boxing fans. He's not a crossover star who kind of, appeals to sports fans in general. Only boxing fans know who Callum Smith is. So for him to be holding out for mega fights against the likes of Canelo and Golovkin, yeah, I guess they could happen, but, you know, he could be waiting a long time. So listen, I mean, ultimately, Callum Smith to me right now, I'm not convinced by his attitude, if I'm being completely honest. If he's holding out for paydays and mega fights, you might as well stay with Eddie Hearn. If you want to unify with other champions, maybe the PBC's a great option. Caleb Plant, the Benavidez Durrell winner, they're great fights. They're great fights. Fights that mean something, you know? Ultimately, what I'm trying to say is, I don't believe Joe Gallagher is being genuine when he says what he says in regards to Callum Smith and rival offers. I just think it's Joe Gallagher trying to turn the screw on Eddie Hearn to offer Callum Smith more money and to put pressure on Eddie Hearn, securing Callum Smith one of these mega fights. That's how I see it, to be honest with you. Maybe I'm wrong. I would actually like to be wrong. I would like Callum Smith to sign with the PBC, fight the likes of Benavidez, Caleb Plant. I would love that. Vice versa, I would like to see Callum Smith maybe stay with Eddie Hearn a couple of fights, fight Billy Joe Saunders. You know, these are the fights I would like to see. The unification fights at 168. But me personally, I think this is all a load of bluster from Joe Gallagher. That's how I see it. Just an exercise in trying to up Callum Smith's purses and get him bigger fights. Share your thoughts below. Do you agree with me, or do you have a different, opinion on this matter? And also, do you guys get the same impression I get with Callum Smith? To me, I don't like the reluctance to unify. For me, Callum Smith isn't really showing a desire to unify and fight the best in his division and create a legacy for himself. I find that disappointing as a boxing fan ultimately. But yeah, share your thoughts below. I'm intrigued to hear your thoughts. Peace.